Hello everybody and welcome back to Robert's Reviews. I'm going to start off with the first movie I watched this morning. I watched this morning, but I didn't film it right away because I was tired, so I took a nap before I went to go see Black Widow in theaters. So I watched this really early in the morning, and then I took a nap. And then I went to see Black Widow, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that, which will be released literally right after this is released. So if you are interested in seeing that, make sure you are subscribing and checking out my video page. But today we are going to talk about Fear Street Part 2, 1978. Fear Street Part 2, 1978 was released in 2021. It was actually just released. It was written by Zach Olowitz and Lee Janiak and directed by Lee Janiak. And I think this movie's good. I think it definitely... Alright, first of all, no spoilers, because I don't do spoilers here. But generally the idea behind it, right, is that we follow up directly from Fear Street Part 1, which happened in the future of what this is supposed to be, set in. But we follow the main characters as they find C. Berman. They find C. Berman, and then C. Berman tells her story of 1978, which is when we go back to see how that happened. And my guess is that it'll be similar for the next movie, which is set in 1666, where we'll see our main characters at first, then we'll visit 1666 and go back to our main characters to see how the story all resolves, because it does have to do the main characters of the first film. But it does take a little bit of time to get used to. It's a really big shock because you start right out where, we're back in whatever year it was, 2000 something, no, it must have been 19 something. Maybe it was 1998, I don't remember. But regardless, we start back off in the first film right afterwards. And it takes some time to get used to that, and then all of a sudden, boom, we're in 1978, which is fine. But I don't think it's really what they were trying to do. I will say that I'm a sucker for camp stories. I love camp movies. I love horror films. I'm not a huge slasher film guy, and this is definitely a slasher, especially towards the second half. But a lot of it does have to do with, the occult, basically, and, witch and wizards and stuff like that. It definitely is more of a fantasy film than a horror film, at least for the most part. There are horror aspects, don't get me wrong. There are some really great bloody scenes, but for the most part, it is just this, kind of weird, mystic feeling to the story, which is cool. I dig it. I don't really care about that kind of thing, but I liked it, and it worked, okay? It did make sense, and it worked, which is all that really matters to me. It was more important for me to be able to understand what was going on than to necessarily like what was going on, because I think that towards the end, there was definitely some satisfaction in what was branded as a horror film. But we follow these new two main characters for this film, who are young children in a camp. And we follow them as they realize that, maybe the witch theory is real, and then somebody gets taken over at the camp, and then there's a bunch of murders, and they're trying to figure out how to stop the murders. And I think it worked. I think especially after the first one. I think releasing this one after the first one was smart. I think if you released it beforehand, it would have made the first one seem less good. And I do think that it kind of does stumble upon itself a little bit, because it is kind of reinstating some of the things we've learned in the first film, which definitely brings out issues with the fact that we just watched the first film last week, right? I get that we have to kind of, the characters, it's new for the characters, right? If I were to tell you, if you were watching this review, right, and you're like, wow, let's show this to a friend, so you pull up your friend and hey, watch this with me, and you're watching with them, you would be getting the same content twice. And it makes sense because somebody else is still getting it new. And we have to think of the characters in the film as another person that is watching the events unfold, basically. Which is cool when you're, in real life, you're looking with friends, you're watching a movie or whatever. But it kind of sucks when you're watching a movie and they spend 10 minutes talking about stuff that you already know from the previous film. But it's a sketchy situation because you can't just leave it out because you expect these old characters to also understand what you understand. But you have to show that, and it is this complicated thing that we can talk about for a long time. I'm not going to. I did find it frustrating at the very least. It wasn't the worst thing that's ever happened, but it was definitely frustrating to think about for a while. But I think that in general it does work. Its tone is nice. I like how it's more chill and more of a relaxed tone than the first one. Until the end where it gets kind of more gritty. But for the most part, it is more laid back than the first film. and I don't think it's quite as solid as the first film. I think the first film definitely had a really good arc, whereas this one was more like, which kind of sucked, considering the first one was really, really good. Not that this one's bad, it's definitely fun, I definitely enjoy it, and it's a good sequel. It does work within the world that they are building here, and I am still excited for the third one. I do think that the third one will be good. I do think that it will wrap up the show very nicely. I think we're going to get a very satisfactory end, although R.L. Stine is not known for his satisfying endings in his stories. I still think it is going to work. I really genuinely do think it is going to end up a very, very solid trilogy. But for the second part, it's fine. It's definitely not the best. I think it will be one of the worst ones. I don't think anything can beat the first one. The first one was really, really solid. So I'm going to have to go ahead and give Fear Street Part 2, 1978, a B+. Definitely check this one out if you guys like kind of witches and stuff like that. It definitely feels more occulty than it does horror or slasher. But make sure you guys are sticking around, because literally, like, as soon as you're done watching this video, my review for Black Widow is going to be up. So if you guys want to check that out, definitely do that. But thank you so much for watching this video, and as always, keep watching movies and television, stay educated, and I'll see you guys in the next video.